So I wanted to follow up from the board gaming perspective. The vlog that I just pushed up to the channel here, Battletech, one of my favorite war games. And this idea of Battletech as a simulation. We're trying to step into that narrative with the miniatures, with the terrain, and the rules are that DNA. The rules are that engine that is going to power it. And the question was, just to frame this perspective from the board gaming perspective, the question was, simulation good, but too much simulation bad, because it'll start to break down the narrative. It'll start to break down that immersion. So it needs to be just good enough to give you some tactical choices, but not go overboard. What about the board gaming perspective? Now, one of the reasons why I love board games so much is it allows a snapshot of a narrative, a snapshot of a simulation, where, and some of these simulations are massive with like miniatures and season 1, season 2, X-Pack 1, expansions. But for the most part, let's talk about Runebound, because I love Runebound. I pull out Runebound 2nd or 3rd edition. We're never going to get a 4th. I know, never say never, but it is what it is. I pull out Runebound, and after I set things up and I start flipping some cards and rolling some dice, I'm in Terranoth. I'm there in the story. I'm there in the adventure. I'm stepping outside of space and time. And that narrative is powered by the board and the tokens and the counters and the miniatures and the rules. Certain things in board game design, I find, break that immersion. They break that immersion. And I don't want to break that immersion, because then I have to reset myself, or if it's with a group of friends, we have to kind of be like pulled back in. So I appreciate complexity. I appreciate the simulation, but I'm very careful to look at the rules when I'm looking at new titles, and I'm looking for these kind of immersion busters. Okay, two examples. Two examples for me, and then I'll turn it over to you guys in the comments. The first is miss a turn. I dislike games that have you miss a turn, because you're sitting around doing nothing. And I understand it represents maybe a simulation, like, oh, you got hit with paralysis, or you got hit with a mind spell, or you got lost in the woods, miss a turn. It's a really easy effect mechanic. But in the here and now of today, no, every turn you need to be immersed. You need to be doing something, making choices. I don't like that miss a turn, exclude a person. You could easily have those effects be, you have 3 action points, right? You can move, you can attack, or you can move and you can take an action, cast a spell, open a door. 3 action points. You get hit, don't miss a turn, you're down to 2 action points. Really easy to remember. I suffer the effects. It builds the narrative, but it doesn't take away. The other thing I dislike are bookkeeping. And I'm looking at Gloomhaven, but Gloomhaven is already a little bit overly complex. And I love Gloomy. If you've been following my channel, I love Gloomy. That's why I'm mentioning it. Having these aspects doesn't necessarily kick a game out of that narrative, but it adds a little more bookkeeping. It adds a little more weight. I don't like effects that require you to track things over multiple rounds. Like, get hit with poison, so for 3 rounds, it's minus this on this check, but not on this check. But if you do this check, yes. Where I'm like, wait, I have to remember that? And I don't have a little card. I've just got a token. So I got to flip the book open and remember what it is. And then I forgot it for 2 turns, because really it was 3 turns. And now I wondered, did it change the course of the game? And now I'm broken out of the immersion. So I prefer my effects streamlined. Have that effect work, have it streamlined, but don't break that immersion in the board game. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys, my fellow board gaming enthusiasts. What are some of those rules that we understand the complexity, we understand trying to make it work, but they break the immersion of how the game works? It pulls you out of the very thing that you're trying to do.